Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Have you ever been told you're just being too sensitive, or maybe you feel things more deeply than others, get easily overwhelmed by loud noises or crowded spaces, and need time alone to recharge, even if you enjoy being social? If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Today, we're diving deep into the science behind a fascinating and often misunderstood trait: the highly sensitive person. This isn't about being weak or flawed. It's about having a nervous system that's wired differently, a trait found in about 15 to 20% of the population. That's 1 in every 5 people. So let's move past the stereotypes and explore the real science of what it means to experience the world with this heightened level of awareness. The term highly sensitive person, or HSP, was first introduced in the mid-1990s by clinical research psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron. Through her work, she identified that this isn't a disorder or a choice, but an innate temperament trait she called sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. And this isn't just a human thing. This trait has been observed in over 100 different species, from fruit flies to fish to primates. This suggests it's a valuable survival strategy that nature has deliberately kept around. At its core, being an HSP means your brain processes information, especially sensory and emotional data, more deeply and thoroughly than the brains of non-HSPs. To make this easy to understand, Dr. Aron created the acronym DOES. Let's break it down. D is for depth of processing. This is the cornerstone of the trait. HSPs naturally process information on a deeper level. When you have an experience, you don't just register it. You analyze it, compare it to past experiences, and find connections others might miss. This leads to a rich, complex inner life. You're likely the person in your friend group who enjoys deep, meaningful conversations over small talk and who thinks things through carefully before making a decision. O is for overstimulation. This is the direct result of that deep processing. Because your brain is working so hard to process everything, it's much easier for you to get overwhelmed. Environments that are chaotic, loud, or filled with intense sensory input, like bright fluorescent lights, strong perfumes, or the general hubbub of a busy mall, can quickly overload your system. This isn't just a preference. It can feel physically and mentally draining, creating a strong need to retreat to a quiet space just to recover. E is for emotional reactivity and empathy. HSPs experience emotions with greater intensity. The highs feel higher and the lows feel lower. But it's not just your own emotions. You're also highly empathetic. You can walk into a room and instantly pick up on the mood. You might feel a friend's sadness as if it were your own. This profound empathy is a great strength, making you a wonderfully compassionate friend. But it can also lead to emotional exhaustion if you don't protect your energy. And finally, S is for sensing the subtle. HSPs have a remarkable ability to notice subtleties in their environment that go right past most people. This could be a tiny shift in someone's tone of voice, a detail in a painting, or the almost imperceptible change in the atmosphere of a room when a new person enters. Now, a common mistake is to think that highly sensitive is just another word for introverted. While about 70% of HSPs are indeed introverts, that means a full 30% are extroverts. These are people who crave social connection and love being around others, but they still have that same finely tuned nervous system. A highly sensitive extrovert might love going to a party but find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer volume of noise and light, needing to step outside for a break before diving back in. The source of their need for a break isn't the people, it's the sensory overload. So with that foundation, let's look at the fascinating science of what's actually happening inside an HSP's brain. This isn't just a feeling, it's rooted in real neurological differences. Using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, scientists can see how the HSP brain lights up differently. When shown images with emotional content, especially pictures of other people, HSPs show significantly more activity in brain regions associated with higher-order processing. One of these key areas is the insula. You can think of the insula as the seat of our self-awareness and empathy. It processes our internal bodily sensations and helps us understand our emotional state. The heightened activity here explains why HSPs have such strong empathetic responses and a deep awareness of what's going on inside their own bodies. There's also more activation in areas like the cingulate cortex and premotor area, which are linked to attention and planning. This suggests HSPs are quite literally paying more attention to their environment and being more deliberate in their actions. And then there's the mirror neuron system. These are the brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else perform that same action. They're crucial for understanding others' intentions and for empathy. In HSPs, these systems, particularly in areas like the inferior frontal gyrus, are more active. It's like their brain is constantly mirroring and processing the experiences of those around them. What's truly fascinating is that this heightened response applies to both positive and negative emotions. When HSPs view photos of happy faces, especially of their loved ones, their brains show greater activation in areas linked to reward and pleasure. This powerfully refutes the myth that being sensitive just means being prone to negativity. It's an amplification of all emotional information, good and bad. This wiring is also supported by genetics. While there isn't a single HSP gene, research suggests that nearly half of the variation in sensitivity can be chalked up to our DNA. Scientists have identified several gene variants that are more common in HSPs. For example, a specific variation of the serotonin transporter gene, which can lead to lower available levels of serotonin, is more common. Since serotonin helps stabilize mood, this could contribute to the emotional intensity HSPs feel. There are also variations in genes that regulate dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. One hypothesis is that a less rewarded response to high-stimulus situations acts as a protective mechanism, preventing HSPs from constantly seeking out overwhelming environments. All of this combines to create a nervous system designed for depth, intensity, and awareness. Living with this finely tuned system presents a unique set of challenges and strengths. Understanding both is key. The most common challenge is, of course, overwhelm. The constant stream of sensory and emotional data can overload the system, leading to irritability, anxiety, and a desperate need for quiet. Another is emotional intensity. Feeling things deeply means criticism or conflict can be especially painful, and HSPs may find themselves ruminating on negative events long after others have moved on. Their high empathy can also lead to people-pleasing and difficulty setting boundaries, as they're so aware of others' needs. Growing up, many HSPs are told they're overreacting, which can lead to feeling misunderstood or flawed. But for every challenge, there is a corresponding strength. That deep processing and empathy make HSPs incredibly intuitive and compassionate. They are often the best friends and most supportive partners. That same sensitivity fuels a vibrant imagination and a strong creative impulse, leading to a rich inner life and a deep appreciation for art, music, and beauty. HSPs are also highly conscientious. They notice details others miss, making them meticulous and reliable. They strive for deep, meaningful connections, building strong, loyal relationships. Now, because some of these traits overlap with other conditions, there's a lot of confusion. Let's clear up the most common mix-ups. First, as we touched on, HSP is not the same as introversion. Introversion is about losing energy from social stimulation. High sensitivity is about being overstimulated by all types of sensory input. Sights, sounds, smells, as well as social and emotional information. An HSP can be an extrovert who loves people but hates loud concerts. Next, HSP versus ADHD. Both can involve being easily distracted. but the underlying reason is different. The hallmark of an HSP is the pause-to-check system. They think deeply before acting. A core trait of ADHD, on the other hand, is impulsivity. In a quiet environment, an HSP can usually focus intensely. Someone with ADHD may struggle with focus regardless of the setting. It's also crucial to know HSP is a personality trait, while ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Then there's HSP versus Autism Spectrum Disorder. This is a very important distinction. Both can involve sensory sensitivities, but that's where the similarity largely ends. High empathy is a core feature of being an HSP. In contrast, challenges with social communication and understanding social cues are a diagnostic criterion for ASD. An HSP's sensitivity is typically hyperreactivity and oversensitivity to stimuli. An autistic person can experience either hyper or hyporeactivity, which is an undersensitivity, or a mix of both. And finally, the prevalence is vastly different. 15 to 20% of people are HSPs, while about 2% of the population is autistic. How about anxiety? HSPs can certainly feel anxious, but it's usually a direct reaction to being overstimulated. Remove the stimulus, find a quiet space, and the anxiety often subsides. In an anxiety disorder, the anxiety is more often generated internally from worries and perceived threats, and can persist even in a calm environment. Lastly, let's distinguish HSP from neuroticism. Neuroticism is a personality trait defined by a tendency towards negative emotions like anger and anxiety. High sensitivity, remember, is about a heightened response to both positive and negative emotions. An HSP is just as likely to feel profound joy from a beautiful sunset as they are to feel stress from a crowded room. Understanding these differences is empowering. It allows people to accurately name their experience and find the right strategies to thrive. So how do you thrive as an HSP? It's not about building thicker skin. It's about building a life that honors your nature. First, prioritize downtime. This is non-negotiable. Schedule quiet time into your day to allow your nervous system to reset. Create a personal sanctuary in your home, a calm, uncluttered space where you can retreat when you feel overwhelmed. Second, learn to set healthy boundaries. Your empathy is a gift, but it can lead you to give too much. Practice saying no to things that you know will drain you. You can be kind, but firm. Communicate your needs clearly to friends and family. For example, instead of a loud bar, suggest a quiet coffee shop. Third, leverage your strengths. In your career, look for roles that value empathy, creativity, and attention to detail, like counseling, research, or design. In relationships, your intuition and ability to connect deeply are superpowers. Choose partners and friends who appreciate your sensitive nature and respect your need for solitude. And finally, the most powerful strategy of all is radical self-acceptance. Stop fighting your nature. Reframe the story from "I am too sensitive" to "I am a deeply feeling, perceptive, and empathetic person." Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a fundamental part of who you are. The recognition of the highly sensitive person marks a major shift in how we understand human temperament. It moves us beyond simplistic labels into a more compassionate and scientific space. While being an HSP in a loud, fast-paced world has its challenges, the narrative is ultimately one of profound strength. The same nervous system that gets overwhelmed by chaos is the one that can be moved to tears by music, that can sense a friend's unspoken pain, and that processes the world with a depth that leads to incredible insight, creativity, and wisdom. By understanding the science, managing the challenges, and embracing the gifts, HSPs can create lives that are not just manageable, but rich, meaningful, and deeply fulfilling. It's a testament to the quiet power of this newly understood trait. Thanks for tuning in to G Fun Facts Online.